Welcome back to the Rush Radio Show, powered by Willis Automotive. Ross, 114 days from today. You know what 114 days from today is?
I'm going to guess that's when Iowa State is playing in Ireland.
That is correct. 114 days. So we thought at the 114-day mark, why not bring in the athletics director at Iowa State, and that's Jaime Pollard. Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Good. Great to see you guys. Been a while.
Good to see you, Jaime.
I'm doing good. No complaints.
I was just going to say, are you doing good? Because, man, it seems like there's a lot of changes and weird stuff happening in your world right now. But you're doing good with it?
You know what? There is, and you can, freak out over all that, or you can just keep your head down and try to push through it. And that's what I've chosen to do.
Jaime, we're waiting on the House settlement to come through. And Ross and I have spent a lot of time talking about the House settlement. How frustrating. I mean, you guys started planning for this a year ago, and here we are almost to June, and it still hasn't been decided. You've got roster caps, you've got all this stuff. I mean, you're an accountant by trade. I mean, when you start planning for this and trying to figure it out, how frustrating it is not for you to be where we are right now.
I'm not frustrated by it. I mean, hey, I'm 60 years old. I've watched the bureaucracy of our country. We're very efficient at everything we do, right? Yeah. So I've long stopped losing hair over and frustration over things I can't control. It'll happen. It'll happen on its time, and I anticipate it will happen. So we're planning for it.
Do you get any indication when it's going to? They say it could be the next couple of days or so, but I mean, do you think she'll accept what you guys, what they put out there for roster caps? And do you think it's going to happen in the next couple of days?
My guess is it will get accepted. When, I haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about it. I mean, quite frankly, I've always lived my life of just tell me what the rules are, and then we'll go figure out how to work with those rules. And a lot of people spend a lot of time, fretting over what are the rules going to be. And I've just never been one of those people because no one's calling Jaime Pollard and asking me what I think about all this. You guys are, but
yeah, right.
But the judge has never called me. So I'll wait to have her tell us what it's going to be, and then we'll move forward because it's just life's too short to spend time worrying about stuff I don't have any control over.
Well, that might answer one of my questions, because I was going to ask you kind of that magic wand thing. Man, maybe you haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about this, Jaime. If you're kind of in that mode, if you got to wait to find out what the rules are going to be. But if I gave you that magic wand and said, man, Jaime, how do we get out of this? It seems like right now a lot of people are confused. Nobody knows what the way forward is. Nobody knows what college athletics is going to look like in 5 or 10 years. If I gave you that magic wand and said we can either go backwards or move forward, what does that look like?
I would go backwards, but not what most people would think when I say that. Is I'd go backwards and have restructured this all a long time ago, because that's our problem. We're not fixing the problem. We're prolonging the inevitable because we're not fixing the problem. The problem is you cannot put a professional model over the top of college sports, but then want to run it like college sports. I mean, the NFL has one commissioner. There's not 4. There's not 8, right? And can you imagine if the Packers, Bears, Vikings, and Lions had a commissioner, and the Cowboys, Redskins, Giants, who else is in that division, had a commissioner? Mm-hmm. And they were all doing their own television deals and all trying to get their own, so our structure is not correct. I saw something where, and I'm not going to have the dates 100% correct, but there was a time that college football had a bigger television deal than the NFL.
Really?
Yeah. Now, I've heard it in the history, because I've seen the presentation, and all the pro leagues went one way and college went the other way. And now we're not even close to those television deals. And so you have to ask yourself why is that way? And the biggest glaring deal is how we're set up. We're set up that we don't pool our rights. We, we make a rule, and before the rule is codified, we're already figuring out how to get around the rule.
Yeah.
And it's absolute ludicrous. And so the inevitable is coming. The inevitable has started. You've seen shrinkage, because you can't, every day I pick up the paper or see a post, another institution is in debt X million dollars. Yesterday it was UCLA, $256 million. They lost $52 million last year in athletics, and they haven't even begun revenue share. Are not sustainable. They just aren't. At some point, the state's legislators are going to say, that's it, right?
So, you bring up something, football has always been separate from the NCAA, right? I mean, they work under. Do you think if you could wave a magic wand, football would be better off under the whole umbrella, or is it better off the way it is and maybe eventually go to one commissioner? Or where would this?
You'd have football. If I could go back using what you said, take the magic wand and go back in time, and I keep preferencing that because I know how this works, right?
Yeah.
The takeaway from somebody listening to this is, Pollard doesn't get it. He just wants to go back to the way it was. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I would use the magic wand to go back in time and say, we should have figured this out a long time ago, that our structure isn't correct. And you could have federated football on a national level and set it up that you could keep all the conferences. The conferences wouldn't have had this rush then to be nationalized. They could have stayed regionalized.
Yeah.
All the other sports would be just fine regionalized, because basketball can be regionalized and still play nationalized. But football should have been nationalized, and there should have been one commissioner running it. There should be one television. I just laugh when I hear,
incredible,
and I'm not picking on the SEC or the Big Ten when I say this, but I saw somebody say this, like, well, it's going to be good. It'll be just like the NFL. If the SEC gets 4 automatics, then they can have play-in games later in the year. So and I saw this, like a 500 team in the SEC would still have a chance that last week to play in, because that's what the NFL does, right? Well, that sounds really good, right? Because the NFL is very successful. But what you're saying is, well, we want to do this, but then we only want to do it for these 16 teams while they're competing against the other 64 teams. No, that works if you say, here's the model, and it's everybody. You can't just say, well, we're going to do the NFL model, but we're going to do it for 40% of college football. It's ludicrous. But that's what we continue to do because we've got self-interest. And until, the presidents haven't shown any ability to contain that. And so I don't know what it'll take. Maybe it'll take Donald Trump's presidential commission, because the presidents haven't gotten it right.
Listen to you, Jaime.
Wow.
We had, you see a lot of these coaches who are a little bit older getting out. We had Greg McDermott on last week, and he's selling off into the sunset in the next year or two. How about from an athletic director standpoint? Do you ever go, man, I'm 60 years old. I don't know if I want to do this and deal with this anymore?
Every day.
That's a serious answer.
That's a serious answer too. That's stone cold right there, man.
But then I'm reminded, I never used to have it this way, but, I'm macroizing this a little, if that's a word. But, 1 minute I'm feeling that, and then the other minute I get something that reminds me that, 90% of our student athletes, this doesn't even matter to them.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're continually pulled. I walk out of my office and I see the elevator towers going up for McFarland Clinic. And I think, wow, this is going to be so cool, Sci-Town, because you can actually feel it now, because you see how big the one building's going to be. And there's going to be 8 of those buildings, right? And you start to go, wow, 2 more years, all this will be built out. And I'm going, yeah, but then I got 2 times 365 times 24 hours of feeling exactly what you just said, like every other minute. So that part isn't as enjoyable as it used to be. Because it used to not have as many of those feelings. You had those feelings every so often, but now you get them like all the time.
I was up there 2 weeks ago. I was at the Alumni Center for a wedding, and I got to see where the construction starting. And I'm just looking out, going, my wife went to Iowa State. She lived in Turner Hall over, and we were just sitting there going, how much it's changed. It looks phenomenal. And you're right. You could just see what that's going to be and the way that's going to change in between Hilton and Jack Trice. It's an incredible vision. Now the big question is, how do you fill it all up? Are you getting a lot of demand because you got goldenrod?
We're in a really good spot, and it just, these things take longer. I mean, it's been a eye-opening is not the right word. It's been a learning process for me because this isn't an area that's not what I grew up working on, right? So, but we've got people that are working with us that's what they do for a living, and Zach Weigert, who is, he lives in Omaha, or at least part of the time. But his company, Goldenrod is out of Omaha, and they're the lead developer on it. We just met with them again this week, and they continue to be very bullish. But it's a process that works at its pace, not at our pace. But the pace is moving really well, and they're excited, and they'll probably break ground on their portion of it a year from now, because they've still they just selected their architect. They've got to select contractors. They got to cost everything out. I mean, we've got a list of about 300 different entities that want to be in the space, but there's a lot of people that want to be on the list, but until you tell them what it's going to truly cost, and you can't tell them that until you've selected a contractor, they've costed out the building, and then you figure out what the rental rates are going to be based on that. And all that stuff takes time, right?
The pro forma means everything. The pro forma means everything.
Correct. I've said to Zach, they've done an awesome job for us, but he's going to earn his keep in the next 18 months, because now it's like, it was one thing to have a game plan. It's another to actually start the game.
Yesterday we were talking about, and I want to bring this up before we move on to other things, but we were talking yesterday about Deloitte and the clearinghouse for fair market value when it comes to NIL, part of the House settlement. As you shake your head, because we're like, who determines fair market value? How come publicly traded companies are exempt from the Deloitte clearinghouse?
Oh, no. I don't know.
Gosh.
The four commissioners are the ones brokering this deal. So, I mean, I've been on so many calls, and I feel like Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah. Just get me to the end and just tell me what it's going to be. And they keep saying it's going to be this, but I'll believe it when I see it, because we've shown absolutely no history of policing ourselves.
Is that leadership? Is that bad leadership?
Man.
It's the structure.
Yeah.
It's the structure.
Jamie, I'm reminded of this thing you said in 2020, and I repeat it often. Sometimes we find out who's in charge of what. And I think that's what we're experiencing here. Who's in charge? Well, it's four people. Your analogy to the NFL of, imagine if the NFC East and the NFC North all had different commissioners and were brokering different television deals. That'd be chaos, right? Yeah, that's what we're dealing with. That's the world we're in.
And then think if the NFL was set up as that, the Packers division is guaranteed 2 spots.
Yeah. And
then, and because of that, the Packers division is going to play 2 less games. And he who has the gold makes the rules. And so until we get that figured out, all we're doing is prolonging the inevitable.
Yeah.
And so I don't, the structure with Deloitte. I mean, we've created another entity, and now we've hired Deloitte, and we've hired the NBA's cap management. We're spending a lot of money, so a lot of other people are going to make money on college athletics here. And if this doesn't work, like, and I've heard people say, well, it's got to work, right? I've heard people at schools say it's got to work. The cap has got to be the cap. And then I talk to my multimedia rights partner and I find out that same school is already scheming how to get around the cap.
Yeah.
And you're just going like, this is ludicrous.
Who pays for Deloitte? So when they go, hey,
the four conferences.
Okay, so I didn't know if you were on the hook, like if they did an individual Iowa State player, hey, Iowa State's going to get the bill from Deloitte.
Yeah, we're paying for all the infrastructure. The four conferences are. I mean, we've got a really good industry. I mean, if there are so many people that just have to go, don't fix it, because we'll continue to make so much money off of this industry. I mean, if I was an agent right now, I'd just be going like, keep doing what you're doing, guys.
Yes.
We love it.
Yeah. Cash and checks, man.
Man.
Can we have some fun? Can we move on to Ireland?
But you can't, but but if you think about it, like you're going, okay, it's set up in a way as like, who's gonna say, like, I mean, you can say on a micro level, which school is going to say they're out first, right? So you can see what's happening, because Iowa State's no different. If you listen to my podcast that I did with that student, who actually was really good because he knew nothing about athletics. And that's why I chose to do it with him, because he came to the table with no preconceived notion. He didn't know one thing about athletics, but he was smart enough to ask questions that just led to, a fair, just kind of account of it, because he didn't come into it with, and that's not a fault of anybody, but it was just refreshing, right? But why I say that is, what school is going to raise their hand and say we're out? So Iowa State's no different. We're not going to say we're out, but we're going to have to make some decisions to stay in the game until the music stops, right? And when the music stops, we're all hoping there's going to be cheers for us. But if there's not, then, we won't all be out we'll all go out at the same time. Instead of some people going, gosh, to stay in the game, I'm going to have to spend university money to do this. But every day I pick up news articles showing how much universities have put in to stay in the game. And so what makes that difficult is then on the macro level, because you got four people in charge, if I've got 16 schools that I think probably all are going to make it when the music stops, then why would I want this madness to stop?
Yeah.
Right? So there's no incentive for everybody to work together. There just isn't. They say there is, but there really isn't.
Man, to me, it's all gonna. I don't know if it's gonna work itself out, but it's like the chaos. The wheel, the hamster wheel just keeps spinning around and around. It's great.
There'll be a correction at some point in time. What I can't tell you is what the correction will look like, right? But there'll have to be a correction, but I don't know what that correction. The correction could be that there's only 20 schools that are able to do this ludicrousy, and the rest will figure out a new model that we'll all accept and be fine with. It could be that, people just start falling by the wayside. And, I worry about that, because you can't have Rutgers $400 million in debt, UCLA 250. Those numbers, there's no
not sustainable.
Wow. It's not sustainable.
No,
it's just not.
Jamie, you've mentioned a few times, the inevitable.
Yep.
What is that worst case scenario?
Well, it's hard to even paint that, because then, I
don't want you to put ideas in people's heads, and then it turns into Jamie Pollard thinks doom and gloom. So,
we've seen contraction, and I anticipate you'll see more contraction, just because people aren't going to be able to fund these different, the gap's just too big, right? At some point, there'll be enough contraction that you'd like to think there'll be enough people being left behind that they'll coalesce around something to go forward, right? Because college athletics is still really viable and really a good thing. But too many people are chasing a pot of gold that is a fallacy. And so maybe there needs to be a new model and different pots of gold to chase, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there is, we're used to Division 1, 2, and 3. Most people know what Division 3 is. Most of us used to know what Division 1 was, and probably a lot of people didn't know what really Division 2 was, right? Depending on what part of the country you're in. But maybe Division 1, maybe there needs to be Division 0 and Division 1 or something, but it's going to be really hard to get there when you've got 4 people highly paid to try to stay in the game.
We are 114 days away from Ireland, and I think that is sold pretty good. Are you looking forward to Ireland?
No, those are the good days, right? Because then I
Yes.
go, we've got over 10,000 people that have signed up to go to Ireland. K-State's got 10,000 people. The folks in Ireland have, they said, we're selling out all the other seats in the stadium. So there'll be 50,000 people at that game. It's going to be a really neat experience for Iowa Staters and K-Staters.
Can you explain just? Oh, go ahead, Travis.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. No,
I was going to ask about the financial side of this. You're an accountant, Jamie, and this stuff matters. We're talking about money. Yep. What is the financial impact of having the team play this game in Ireland?
Well, it's K-State's home game, so I can't really speak to their side of the deal because, that was part of, we didn't have a home game to give up. So we had to find somebody. We wanted to do the game, but we had to find somebody that was willing to give up a home game. So K-State's got a different deal than us, and I don't know what their deal is, but they should have a different deal because they get
that makes sense.
So in our case, it really was to cover expenses, yet we knew we would have more expenses than just our expenses because it's a pretty big Iowa State event. I mean, there's people going that typically wouldn't go to a road game, right? There's a whole bunch of people from the foundation and the presidents because there's going to be events. So, and then we're taking the band. And, anytime we take the band on an away trip, that's an expense, but this is going to be a little bit more than now we're taking a smaller band. Both K-State and Iowa State agreed to take the same size bands. But, it's probably net maybe $500,000 more than we would have spent had we just gone to K-State and not taken our band, and the band would have went on a different trip someplace.
Yeah.
So to us, that's worth it because of the experience that will happen over there. And it may not be that much either, but it's, I'm just kind of projecting based on some,
Who gets all the players' passports and who has to pay for that?
We had to pay for all the passports and we had to get them all.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
everybody that's on the trip has to, now it was interesting the number of people that already had passports, which
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I know that the Cyclone Tailgate Tour is going to kick off on Monday. You're going to be all around the state. I'll probably stop over on Friday and see you over there in Council Bluffs. But is this an event you look forward to every year? Because we had John Walters on earlier in the week, and this was your brainchild. And he just talks about the connection you've been able to make with fans. But it's also good, like on the bus, because all the coaches, they know each other, but they don't get to spend a lot of time together during the season. So it's kind of a team building thing too.
Well, it is, and I may find out that we changed it this year, so they may not like me as much by the end of the week. We used to do it in 2.5 days one week and 2.5 days the next week. This week we're just doing one straight week on the road. So by the time we get to Omaha, there'll probably be 2 things happening. We'll be sick of each other, but we'll be fired up because it's the last day. So, but no, it's been really successful. I would attribute it to a big part of, the development of our athletics program over the last 20 years. I think it was a cause, but I also think it is a reflection also of a lot of good things that happened during that time. We joked back then when we started it that we needed to go plant our own seeds and grow our own fans. And so that can sound kind of hokey, but I do believe that's happened.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the only thing that was happening during that time period. So it all kind of comes together, but it's fun. It's a reminder when we go on the road of the 90 like I said earlier, there's those days you go, it's time to be done. And then there's days that you're reminded like, this is really cool. And next week, I've already talked to TJ. I'm going to meet with Coach Campbell right after this podcast, just to talk about next week. And next week will be a healthy reminder that people just are excited. And 99.9% of the people we talk to could care less to hear me talk about the problems in college athletics. They just want to hear they want to see the coaches. They want to get autographs. They want to talk about the bowl games, the blah, blah, blah. Right. And so enjoy the moment.
All right, Jaime, we appreciate you giving us time. I know you're a busy guy. Don't let John Higgins ski at Lake Panorama, all right?
So is he like your agent? Because like he called me to say, Travis wants to have you on. And I'm like, so Travis goes through you now, John, huh? Did John take a cut of this?
Yeah, no, but I do some things for John. I host his Make the Right Calls podcast with Steve Olson, and John has his basketball association. So, and we've been hanging out for 20 years together, and I knew you guys were friends. I'm like, I went through Nick Jost, I went the proper channels, but I said, hey, if you could nudge Jaime a little bit, that'd be great. That'd be great.
You helped me work on John because I'm trying to get him to upgrade his boat because I sold my wakeboard boat and got a pontoon, and his ski boat you can't wake surf behind, but they were looking at a new boat.
Well, it's time.
I was like, John, you need to do that because the best boat to own is your neighbors. And so I need somebody I can wake surf behind.
So I will call him right after this and say, Jaime says get a new boat. That's the cost of coming on the show.
I love it.
I hope you come on with us again, Jaime. It's been a fun conversation. I know you're busy, but maybe sometime before the season starts, we can do it again. Just talk about everything that's settled out and everything else that is happening. We appreciate the time, sir.
And congrats on your success, Jaime. We talk about it a lot on the show, and our comments are reflective of it. You've done an amazing job at Iowa State. I hope you feel that. I know that in the middle of the mud, it might be hard to step back and look. You've left quite a legacy there, and very impressive. So thanks a lot for all of that hard work.
Well, thanks. And I'll look to see if we can increase the Ireland budget to $525 and take the rush with us. How's that?
There you go. Perfect. We'd sign up.
Daily shows from Dublin.
Yeah, we could do that. And that'd be in the afternoon, so it'd be perfect. All right,
Jaime,
guys. Have a good weekend. Appreciate it.